I hereby want to discuss the different prototypes of scoop elongations I made in the last couple of days and weeks in order to somewhat optimize basically getting the protein powder out of the protein powder bag. Now, 2 years ago, this is now the motivation, I tried, first of all, protein powder, not for the first time, but I wanted to, first of all, before this had try to adhere to the standard that I would not have any additional supplements basically in my diet, and I would try to get all my nutrients from the food. But then I wanted to try something different, or it's not that I wanted to try something different, but this is the initial, but nonetheless I decided to get protein powder. Now, over the last 2 years I have been consuming quite a little bit of protein powder here and there, and I have also now recently again started the project to try to see whether I could get all of my nutrition basically into powder form and basically switch the proportions from, okay, I usually eat all of my food from normal food and then additionally something like protein powder, and to switch it over to, okay, maybe I try at least, and that's currently kind of in the phase of going over. So I currently eat maybe 1 or 2 shakes a day or 3 shakes a day, and the rest is probably normal food. Now the idea is to switch these in order to optimize my time usage over the lifetime basically. Now, if you try to get protein powder out of a bag, there is this problem. Now the problem is as follows. First of all, you get these, and these, at least from the company I get protein powder from, come with every protein powder bag. Now I also got food powder from a different company, and they actually sold it with these levers. Not levers, but scoops. Now these things are called scoops or protein powder scoops. Now one of these has a volume of 70 milliliters, and if you have poor whey protein, then this also is 30 grams in terms of a serving. If you have a different protein powder or a different product, this might turn out to be a different kind of, so it might turn out to be a different mass, because, well, the protein powder and the different products might have different densities. Now, the problem is as follows. If you have this here, and you now try to get this out here, then in the beginning this works quite fine. The lever is maybe a little bit too short for my hands, but you can get the protein out quite easily. But this only works until, or it works only so long as the bag is still somewhat full, because as the bag then goes emptier, and it is somewhat cheaper to get bigger bags, because then, well, you don't have to have that many shipping costs per product and so on and so forth. At least that's what I assume. Then the situation is different. If you now, because you now have to bridge all the distance, and if you have any kind of sleeve, then this now is stuck to the rest of basically here. This bag is completely empty, so there's almost nothing in there. But then you have stuck protein powder on your watch, maybe also on your wrist, and then you get it out, and then it spills over your kitchen countertop. And this is something I try to avoid. So I had the idea to come up with different things that I would attach to these. First of all, I switched over to using these. Now these are a little bit bigger, and first of all, now in the beginning I also tried to maybe try the food powder from this company, but then I eventually realized that this was about half as expensive if I just got this as a protein powder, and I also realized maybe to a certain extent I could just use protein powder as my food replacement powder, because I need a lot of protein, seemingly, at least that it is what leaves me not hungry at the end of the day, or when I try to sleep, or not wake me up in the middle of the night being so hungry that I that I would want or would like to stand up and eat something. Now, what I realized is that actually, if you calculate the macros somewhat, and you have like one normal meal in a given day, and then what seems to be the case is that you can actually get, for example, if you have this pure whey protein, so what seems to be the case is that you can also get your fats, at least the 2 different other micronutrients other than protein. You can also get them kind of from the protein powder, and also from maybe the dinner that then would be a normal meal. So to a certain extent, you could say that protein powder at least if it's not like 99% protein or 99 gram per 100 grams protein or something like this, is almost kind of a meal replacement anyway, because at least for me, I do a lot of resistance training, but I also do running and the occasional biking and sprint workout. I need a lot of protein, at least seemingly. At least if I eat a lot of protein, then I'm not that hungry and I feel better. So now, if we take a look at this, for example, this pure whey protein has 7 grams of fat per 100 grams, which is because fat is twice as dense in terms of the energy compared to protein, and carbs, at least simplified, are already quite a little bit of fat. If I eat a couple of scoops of protein powder in a day, then I already have a couple of grams of fat from here. I also have 4 grams of carbohydrates. Now 4 grams of carbohydrates might not sound that much, but again, if I have a little bit of other things like cucumber and also vegetables and so on, these are also carbohydrates. So as also, it seems to be the case that my mental stability seems to be higher, or a sense of urgency, probably due to the not blocking of cortisol, or many different aspects to this. Now let's get into the prototype discussion. So I switched over to, first of all, then this scoop, but this scoop is a little bit bigger, so I had the problem that I would only fill it to 80%, but filling to 80% is something that you eyeball, and then it's not that accurate, and then you start to question whether this is actually then properly tracked if I just enter the scoop that is then 30 grams of this. But this scoop has a handle that is too short, so there are the 2 big downsides here. Also, this company in the beginning had these scoops when I began to order, and these have the big downside that the powder doesn't fall out as easily, because compared to this here, which has an incline, there is a bigger opening compared to this here, so the powder falls out easier. Now this might not be the exact reason, but that's just what I now said would be the reason. So I began to attach, first of all, a straw. I had 2 different kinds of straw. First of all, this plastic straw. I bought a bunch of these recently, and then I also got these straws. The main reason I got these straws was if I woke up hungry during the night, and I experimented a lot, and it seems to be the case that if I eat as close to just protein as possible, and also maybe in a shake, because then I can just chug it down and I don't begin really eating, but it's much more a drinking with a liquid, then maybe in order to not have to brush my teeth again, I also should have a straw to drink it. So that was the reason that was the totally unnecessary explanation for the reason I got straws. Now, I first of all tried to attach them with tape. Now, in terms of design, well, this is also transparent, which makes it somewhat invisible, but also it's protein powder and you need to wash it, so this was kind of just a prototype. I then also tried rubber bands. The problem with the rubber bands is that they don't look very nice, because you have to, so the rubber band is like this, and then in order to have multiple, I don't know, loops of the rubber band, you need to kind of make it such that it now has multiple crossings, and this does not look very professional. So it also kind of was not that tight. So what I changed to is that I used cable binders, and I just cut them off. So I tied them as tightly as I could, and then I just got them off. Now you have to be careful not to cut them off exactly close to this here, so leave a little bit, because otherwise it seems to be the case that the tension that the cable binder is under otherwise could leave this, at least with the cable binders I have, and then it springs open again, or can at least. So this one was fine. The problem is, now this also is heavy, which is nice. The problem with this now is, and this is now just a metal straw, that if you have a full protein powder bag, then you have the problem that it sticks out. So you need something maybe that is a little bit shorter. So I then also already with the other had the idea to, first of all, these were actually the first straws I attached. So this would be a little bit smaller. So you can also kind of fit it in like this and then close the bag, because obviously you need to close the bag, otherwise moths or something like this will get in. Now, I then switched over to, first of all, the cable binder method. In between I tried the rubber band method, but I also had the idea, what if I took something that is already kind of made of metal, and I do have a couple of these lying around. Now, in terms of the options I had for now elongation of this lever, Well, I had the straws, I had also knives, but the knives are not very symmetrical. So I also had forks, but the forks had then the fork on the other side. So this might be something that then is not that round if you hold it like this. And so these were basically the things I had left in kind of a multitude. Now, therefore, I took the spoons. I had a couple of spoons left, and I only have a couple of open protein powder bags. Now, I did two different designs, if you talk about this like a design process, and it's not just me attaching scoops to protein powder. Not scoops, but scoops to spoons. Now, first of all, I did it the other way around. The problem with the other way around is that your hand is shaped like this, and if it grapples, then the natural shape that kind of follows is kind of going onto this. Now, therefore, I turned it around. Now, the problem with turning around is that at least with the tape, it actually got out a little bit. So, because at least in this scoop, there was not that much space here. Now, this eventually was resolved when I switched to the other scoops in order to also have a better measurement, because these are kind of flat. So there is no basically rail on the side that would prevent this tape from holding the spoon to the scoop. So what I ended up with is then using a spoon and these new scoops, which also look kind of cleaner because this is transparent and this is just a spoon, which is also made for washing it again and again. And you could also say, compared to tape and compared to rubber, which eventually due to UV radiation becomes very begins to basically dissolve usually after maybe a couple of months under pressure. It seems to be the case that this is also kind of the most dishwasher friendly, not dishwasher, but just wash friendly material. So now I am making one just for the video, and I also have to maybe align this with the camera. So I am taking one of these cable binders, and then I am cable binding the cable binder. I did it on the right side and I try to have it symmetric. You could also just have it on the bottom, is something I realized now, because that probably would be a cleaner look. But then, well, it actually is a cleaner look. The problem is just that I would like now all of these to be the same, which means if I have it like this right now, then I need to undo all the other ones. But maybe let's just try to see what happens, at least visually, if I not only visually, but also in terms of the strength. So this is what happens if you tear them, or if you bind them a little bit too tight, because these are only like small cable binders. You could also, of course, use big ones, and this would be probably more stable over the long term, but then you also have to pay for the big ones, and so in terms of prototyping, this increases the hurdle for getting something like this done. So now it seems to be the case that I cannot tie it as tightly if I have it on the ground, not on the ground but on the bottom. Whereas if I now turn it around, and I don't know if this is still possible, it is still possible. I just have to apply a little bit of pressure, and this is now what it looks like. If I have it on the side, then it seems to be just a little bit more stable. I don't know why it exactly would be like this, but now this is here on the side, and so this seems to work a little bit better. Now, in terms of the distance, of course you don't wanna, of course it seems to make sense that you begin not here, but actually kind of here, and then also end somewhere where this broadening does not, basically where it doesn't get more narrow, because then it would still grapple kind of the full thing. And so then I take a scissor and cut the remains off. I leave maybe about 1 or 2 millimeters, and so I then have the next scoop. Now, in terms of using this, what already comes to mind, so first of all, of course, now I also have the problem that it doesn't totally fit in. Maybe I could also get a little bit of protein powder to the side and then stick it in. Yeah, well, that's a problem. But on the other side is that I now also have a very long lever, not a very long lever, I have a very long handle, which means if I now have a bag of protein powder that is empty, then I can just get it in, and then I can still have it with the tips of my fingers, basically almost grappling, not almost, but I can still grapple the bottom if I have the top of the spoon. Now, in terms of ergonomics, you could say, what is also nice is that this has now a little bit of a counterweight. So first of all, it seems to be that around here is the center point of gravity. But now if you fill it with if you fill this with protein powder, then you obviously have 30 grams on this side, and so you have a kind of a counterweight on the other side. So it feels kind of nice to have this weight to the spoon. And so if I now get the protein powder out, and in terms of what is the goal, it's usually to fill it in this here. So I first of all fill this with water, and then I take this out, and now I can transport this, and it's also quite stable. Because, well, it is a spoon, and the spoon is kind of already made to be balanced. It's not something like this, where it now would kind of tip over, but it's something like this, where I can also balance this, and so I then can have it, and also from kind of a distance, maybe over the sink, for example, I then can fill in the protein powder. But since I do not need a protein scoop now, I just fill it back into this, and this was the prototypes I made, with the winner being this one.